Welcome to the Know, I'm Mica. We've known for some time that Nintendo is getting its own themed land at Universal Studios in Orlando, complete with a Donkey Kong roller coaster and Mario Kart attraction based on documents from late last year, and apparently those plans have gotten even bigger. WFTV in Orlando reports that Pokemon will now be a part of the massive project, with plans to open a Pokemon-themed area as part of the Kids Zone at Universal. According to the report, the bulk of the Nintendo Land will now be moved to Universal's massive expansion across the street. While the report claims that Pokemon Land will be coming to Universal in 2020, one theme park industry resource on Reset Era claims that date is dubious, but all the rest of the information is sound. He also adds that a Zelda-themed zone is rumored to take over the Lost Continent area of Islands of Adventure. No matter the case, it sounds like we can expect a lot of video game content coming to Universal Studios no earlier than 2020. Now, if only they could be like Japan and bring over Attack on Titan and Sailor Moon, then we'd be just okay. Here's a shocking news development. It took a hacker a short amount of time to add a much requested feature to the Nintendo Switch: save game backups. Save games have been a sore point for Nintendo Switch since it launched because cloud saves aren't supported and saves aren't even stored on SD cards, they're stored on the Switch's internal drives. As a result, if something happens to your Switch, you lose everything, as many people using third-party Nyko docks have recently been discovering. That really sucks, and there's been no word from Nintendo on when there might be improvements, so computer engineer Bernardo Giordano has stepped up to the plate, and he's announced via social media that he's successfully got save management software working, and he intends to distribute the software via GitHub later this year once it's finished with testing. He says it took about 2 weeks of working to get the software going, which kind of begs the question, why hasn't Nintendo done that on their own if it can be just that easy? Bungie just officially announced the next expansion for Destiny 2, Warmind, is coming next month, on May 8th, to kick off the game's third season. To be fair, Warmind had totally been leaked ahead of time, but it's nice to hear it straight from the horse's mouth for a change. The announcement was part of a post on Bungie's this week about the game's upcoming roadmap, which included some teases about what we can expect from the next drop of content. In the update, Bungie wrote that Warmind will send you to new places to meet new heroes and battle new enemies. You'll earn new loot and master new activities. So just like the rest of them. Got it. The roadmap also promised some changes coming to Destiny 2 to address some of those lingering player concerns, with weapon slot changes and weapon randomization on the map for September. If you want to know more about Warmind, the developer will be revealing it in a live stream April 24th. Back in February, a group of developers working at Eugen Systems, the studio behind Steel Division Normandy 44 and the Wargame franchise, went on strike over disagreements with the management. Specifically, the employees claimed Eugen wasn't complying with minimum wage laws, demanded unpaid overtime, and failed to honor some contractual obligations with employees. At the time, the studio responded that they did honor minimum wage laws and issued paycheck corrections as necessary, but did acknowledge that paychecks had gone out late as a result of some legislative changes that had happened. The group launched a crowdfunding campaign that raised 14,000 euro to support the employees during the strike, but earlier this week they announced that they had decided to end it and return to work at the studio with a statement that said, "We do not think we will gain any additional ground with the strike, despite the fact that our grievances are simply about conforming to labor laws and collective labor agreements." The Rock's video game adaptation Rampage is finally hitting theaters tomorrow, and right on schedule, we've got its first reviews. Rampage has unsurprisingly landed at a less than stellar position on Rotten Tomatoes, holding at a solid 48 rating. The general consensus among critics is that it has pretty weak screenplay and that's all over the place in terms of tones, not so great CGI work, except for the Rock CGI gorilla buddy George, he looks pretty good, and that doesn't even have very satisfying action. However, it's not all bad news. Plenty of critics found the movie to be a ridiculous brand of fun, and for the most part, George and The Rock were the highlights of the movie. Not surprising. USA Today summed it up with, while surprisingly dark and a smidgen too earnest at times, Rampage wraps silly spectacle around its emotional core, a bromance between man and beast. The AV Club said of Rampage in its B- review, "It's hard to deny that as a B-movie diversion, Rampage often delivers," and the Seattle Times added, "Only two things need to be said about Rampage. It's really terrible, and I enjoyed it immensely." So really, can you get a better endorsement than that? Also, The Rock's in it, so I'll probably watch it. With tons of rumors flying around that Ben Affleck won't be picking up the mantle of the Caped Crusader again for director Matt Reeves' solo Batman film, one of the leading names in the pack of Bat-suitors was Jake Gyllenhaal, and he's now taken himself out of the race. Speaking with China News Asia, Gyllenhaal was asked point blank if there was any truth to the rumor that he was Reeves' #1 Bat guy, to which he replied, "Wow, that's a very difficult question. The answer to that question is no." So in addition to there being conflicting reports and questions about whether or not this new solo Batman movie will be a part of Justice League continuity or a title in DC's plan for a series of unconnected standalones, it also still doesn't have a Batman. You might recognize the name Billy Mitchell from the documentary King of Kong, which documented attempts to overtake his world high score in Donkey Kong, and he's also been noted as earning the first perfect score in the original Pac-Man arcade game. Yeah, unfortunately for him, most of his high scores have now been dismissed after an investigation into some of his scores was determined it was impossible to produce some of the images shown in the videotape recording of the score without modifying the Donkey Kong arcade hardware, and that those transition images could only be made using an emulation software, which isn't allowed for those scores. As a result, Steve Wiebe from the King of Kong is now recognized as the first million-point record holder for Donkey Kong. So congrats, Wiebe, you earned it. That's all the news we have for you today. Remember to comment on any of your favorite news stories in the comments below, and for more news from every corner of the internet, like this video. And if you're new around here, subscribe to the now. As a result, if something happens to your Switch, you lose everything, as many people using third-party Nyko docs. Nyko? I said Nyko, like a cat. So computer engineer Bernardo Giordano? Yeah. So computer engineer Bernardo